Live from Kent, this is The Late Late Show with Toby Payne-Cook and Ed Finch. And you are listening live.
I have to shout really loud over this theme music, otherwise you can't hear me. Anyway, good evening. It's Wednesday and all that malarkey. Lucy's in the house, Maxim's in the house. It's going to be a good show, very spontaneous. Warming, had a bit of wine, everybody. Had a bit of a wine this evening. Good evening, everyone. How is it?
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org or join in the conversation by downloading the Podbean app and following Teachers Talk Radio. Hashtag TT Radio.
It's very loud, that backing music. It's very hard for you to hear me over it. I think that's why I was shouting. I'm sorry. Did you hear my shouting over the? What a dramatic introduction indeed, Maxim. Hello, Christine. Hello, Lucy. Hello, Catherine. Hello, Maxim. And hello, XKXNBJHP, whoever you may be. I'm a poet and I don't know it. Don't even know it. You're a poet and you don't even know it. Anyway, Ed's going to join us in a minute. He might still be having his mid-weekly constitutional with his lovely son, Douglas. Who knows? I started a few seconds late. I wasn't bang on the 9 o'clock. So, but he knows it's happening. He knows it's Wednesday, and we had quite an intense discussion last week, and it was very current. There's lots in the news, which will be played later on, about the Ofsted stuff that we were talking about last week. It was lovely to have Flora join us last week and discuss all the issues surrounding Caversham and I've forgotten the name of Flora's school now. Anyway, there we go. So that was last week. So it's quite a serious debate, and that's obviously been all over the news. I don't know what's going on at all on Edgy Twitter, as I said last week, sort of deleted Twitter from my phone, deleted the app from my phone, which is revelatory, I have to say. I am no longer doom scrolling and wasting lots of time. I've done a lot more writing. I've done a lot more reading. I am less concerned with things that I can do nothing about. Whilst it is good to be informed, I think it's good to be informed about what's going on in the world and in the world of education as it pertains to our jobs. I do think that sometimes we can all get a bit too immersed in it, and we can be encouraged to take a position on things that we perhaps don't actually have a position on, that we are sort of pushed into polarized directions, often by our political allegiances or our feelings about a certain individual or institution. And so, sorry, Christine, you're missing me on Twitter. That's kind. I know I'm not missing me on Twitter. I am logging on occasionally. Here he is. Here is CPD CC Yaff. Hello, CPD CC Yaff.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm quite springy this evening.
Springy.
I've
opposite of springy.
Well, no, you're still at school. I'm on holiday, of course.
Do you know what? I've said all my life that I didn't think I would work in the private sector, but when I hear about your holidays, Toby, I am sorely tempted. You're like the serpent, and I'm like Eve, and your holidays are like the apple. But would I be expelled from the garden? That's the question. Would I be expelled from the garden if I were to taste of that apple? Worth it.
We're going to dig into that a bit tonight, aren't we? Is that we're going to talk about a little
That might have
bit?
been a really clever little segue. But anyway, so how long have you been on holiday?
Since Friday.
And how long are you on holiday?
I have 3 weeks. So I'm back.
3 weeks.
I'm back on the same, probably on the same Monday
We
as
dream
you.
of 3 weeks. We shan't see 3 weeks together in a row until summer.
Oh, I know. Well, it's that time, isn't
I've
it?
lost
Now?
you. You still there?
Am I still here?
Yeah.
Am I?
Something interesting.
Dave.
There you
plays
go.
darts.
Yes. Yes, good.
Um,
Sorry, I was struggling with my headphones there, but you're as clear as day now, my friend, as clear as day.
Well, I have got the murmuration. I've got the murmuration of transcendental meditation / yoga coming through the
What?
closed door of the sitting room next door. So Gemma and they're waving at me. Gemma and
Yeah,
Anna are in residence. My near
right.
18-year-old and my 16-year-old, and they are revising for GCSEs and A
Good
levels
for
this
them.
summer. And so
I respect them for it.
if they don't, and they're both done. They've been with me since hang on, when did they come here? I can't remember now. The weekend, I think.
Hmm.
They were based here at the weekend. Yeah,
Have
I
they
was
just
aware
had
that
some horrific set of mocks? I bet they have.
they had
Schools seem to do nothing but mocks nowadays. They don't do any
mocks.
teaching. They just keep mocking away. So they make
Mocking
a mockery of
away.
the whole process. They do.
Yeah.
Dude.
So yeah, but they've been doing quite a lot of work. I'm impressed. Much more work than Ollie ever did. And I don't want to gender stereotype there at all, but there might be a thing there. Anyway, and they are, if they don't have a walk or exercise in the daytime, they're doing yoga in the evenings, which is
Well, good for
just
them.
kind of cool. But
Yoga.
it's
I should get into yoga. You should definitely get into yoga. We collectively should get into yoga. We should change this podcast. It should be less serious attempts to connect it to education and more yoga. I think that's actually what I want.
yoga or tai
Edgy
chi.
yoga.
I've never. Yeah, I used to. I voted for the yogic flyers once, the Natural Law Party.
You voted for them, did you? Was it?
It was me. It was me in 1997 when I was brought up a Tory, and when I was, and when John Major when my first time I voted was 92. That was the first and last time I voted Tory, and I will never be voting Tory again. I just want to clarify.
No, well,
But
we can attend. And you voted for Major. Well, you didn't vote for Major. You voted for your local
92.
MP, but
Well, I did. I voted for whoever it was down in Devon. That was Emma Nicholson, I think she was called. And then in 1997, I desperately wanted the Tories out, as did everyone else.
So
but
you thought the
I
yogic
just
fly was
couldn't
probably the
quite- I
best
couldn't
way
quite
to
vote. I couldn't quite vote for Blair. I never really liked Blair, and I just, it was too far. And I think that's going to be the gist of some of our conversation tonight. Actually, is that I'm very centrist, and I have some quite sort of non-conformist, it's fairly, you do that, that political spectrum thing. You do that survey.
Yes, where do you end up? I
end up bottom left. I end up like off the scale bottom left, really libertarian and really left wing, like the Green Party, but with quite a lot of sort of militant. Basically, I'm a sort of Greenham Common activist. I'm a sort of CND. Pioneer. I don't know. I mean, I'm all that sort of stuff in theory, but in practice, life's somewhat different, isn't it? Life's somewhat different in practice. That we're all entrenched in our own little parts of society, and so anyway. But then I voted for the Natural Law Party in 1997. I don't know why. It was a moment, and I could do that. I used to be able to do that folded leg thing where you could bounce across mattresses really fast.
Could you do that?
Yeah, I could.
You do that? I can't imagine you doing it now.
I can't. No, Ed. You've seen me get in and out of the water.
I have.
Towing over rocks in Bucks Mills. It's not a pretty sight.
It's like something out of David Attenborough, isn't it?
And now the lesser spotted North Atlantic grey seal
heaves himself out of the water to rest his bulk upon the sand, hoping to attract barnacles.
To his feet, yes, there's always barnacles. You got cut by barnacles when we went swimming at Heartland last year.
Sliced. Hey, if we are going up to Devon, if we're going to have a little walk,
yes,
we're thinking maybe next Thursday. Are we thinking
next Thursday works for me? Does that work for you?
I think, as I have to say, I can't really see past the end of the week, to be honest with you, but I think it does. I think I'm around next Thursday. We could. It's not too early here, is it? It's definitely spring now. Do you think we could go for the first swim of the year? Go for the first swim of the year?
It'll be sorry, I nearly swore really badly. It'll be freezing, Ed. It'll be freezing. The season it's coldest at this time of year. After the cold winter, we've not had any warm spring days yet. We've not had any long spring days yet.
Invigorating.
Invigorating. I've got plenty of blubber. It would be good for me. I think it would be good for me. If it's I mean, if it's pouring down with rain and blowing a gale, then no.
Don't know.
But I think if it's a sunny day, if it's in yeah. I mean, I might even
Okay,
bring
well,
my
maybe.
I could bring my
What?
wetsuit down and cheat. I could cheat.
You definitely could. That is, I mean, I've got a wetsuit that I've literally never put on. Bought it when I was training for a triathlon
Oh my gosh!
back.
There's some
Well,
revelations this evening.
I could definitely run the distance. I could definitely swim the distance, very, very slowly indeed. But I could swim the distance, and I could definitely cycle the distance. The question: I never found out whether I could do them all on the same day because then Diane got more poorly and then stuff. But I did go as far as buying a ruddy wetsuit, which sits in the bottom of my wardrobe to reproach me. I just don't think I'd look pretty in a wetsuit. That's the thing.
I wouldn't look pretty in anything.
I don't like to think of myself as a vain person, but when I imagine the horrors that would be this frame packed into a wetsuit, I feel that
You
it's
want to
not.
you do want a sort of a classic British hourglass figure, don't you, to fit into a wetsuit, really? And
You
I'm
do
not sure.
really.
Yes, I'm pretty anti wetsuit for swimming in the sea. However, when I used to start going down to Pembrokeshire for the annual battle of the Bristol Channel before I went into teaching, when I was married. And early on in my life, Amanda's family had got or her aunt still has a holiday
Mhm.
house in Pembrokeshire, and obviously I grew up in North Devon, and there wasn't enough holiday back. There is plenty of holiday now to go to both sides of the Bristol Channel, but there wasn't back then in the early noughties before when I was an industrial scientist, and so we used to have the annual battle of the Bristol Channel, and Pembrokeshire normally won because of tensions between ex-wife and mother
Mhm.
dearest and all that stuff, and not really just that. Actually, Pembrokeshire's lovely, and so and we were right on the beach there, whereas we were 10 miles inland in Devon. But there was a lot of wetsuit wearing there in that family, and then we were down there
Mhm.
one year, probably about quite recently, maybe 2017, something like that, 2017 perhaps, maybe even 2018, when we were down there, and our week was a classic British summer washout, and it was just a grey, wet, quite cold, windy week, and thought, you know what, if we're going to enjoy this for a week, we're going to go and buy wetsuits, and we're just going to get in the sea and just wallow in the sea, and it was lovely actually because it's not much. It's okay going in the sea for a little bit when it's cold and grey, but it's not much fun for minute upon minute and hour upon hour, and if you can't do anything on the sand because it's all wet and rainy and miserable. So that's why I've got a wetsuit. But it's not a pretty. It takes me about half an hour to get into it and about 3 hours to get out of it.
Yeah.
So it's not much use really. Anyway, there we are. So yeah, I'd be up for that dipping in the water, but I don't. Yeah, scary thought. It's early. It's early. Early April's
Well,
early.
I mean, I'm not promising, but we can see, can't
You're a
we?
bit
We can
mad.
all.
You're a little bit Dave Lee Travis like that. You're a little bit mad, me.
Well, look, mad me, yeah. Well, I don't know when I last did. I haven't been in the sea since I was last in the sea with you, my friend.
Oh well, that was
Whatever that was.
blissful, wasn't it? That was Bucks Mills on a
But it
calm.
was
That was beautiful,
beautiful,
blissful,
beautiful
beautiful, very
day. It
warm. Yeah.
was.
Um.
Anyway,
Anyway, but I haven't asked you how you are. You're obviously very tired, dragged down by
very,
teaching
very
malarkey,
tired. That's what
head
I am.
teaching malarkey.
I can see nothing else other than tired.
Oh, I know.
I
Well,
will get through it, and then we will have a joyful, like 2 more get-ups. I can do this. I've got to teach all day, both days, because of course,
cover.
of course, I had a supply booked for year 1 tomorrow. She's phoned in sick.
Hang on.
Oh,
So you had a supply booked because you have someone sick in year 1, and
yep,
now you've got a sick
yep,
supply in year 1. So
yep.
Ed is teaching year 1. What are you teaching year 1 tomorrow? Probably some English and probably some maths.
There'll definitely be some maths. There'll definitely be some phonics.
Yeah.
There will be some other stuff. I will look at the plans that the poor teacher who's been in hospital for a little while
Oh no.
left. Yeah, no, it's not good. It's not good. We feel sad.
Mm.
She's a great colleague and we love her and we're hoping to have her back very, very soon. However, yeah, and
Best
she's
wishes
bless her.
to said teacher.
Yeah, well, I don't think she's likely listening, but if she is, get well soon. We'll see you after Easter. She's off definitely for another couple of weeks, which is good. She needs to recover. And what can I say? Yeah, you book a supply, and then it was me on Monday. I was there. I'd set up the room for the supply. Teacher printed off the resources, found all the plans, got it all ready for her. and then got increasingly nervous as 8:50 approached, and then swallowed my pride and settled in for the day. Oh well,
Oh,
never
yeah.
mind. And then they
Never
ask you what you
mind.
haven't done, some data drop or something. You're like, no, been teaching all day.
Mm,
Anyway,
yeah,
it's a funny
I
old
know.
job, isn't it? Funny old job teaching.
Well, of course, I feel, I feel I've got this renewed um, sense
Well,
of
you got,
purpose regarding it.
you
I'm going to
have.
have a fresh start in September and in a new school, and it's exciting,
It is
and I feel
exciting.
it is exciting, and I feel yeah, so
Like a natural woman? No.
I feel like a natural woman, and I feel at the end of term, like last
Mhm,
week, just joy really. I mean, there's quite a lot of people. There's quite a lot of people leaving my current school,
mhm.
for various reasons. It's and uh, but I think I had a joyful weekend. We had an alumni dinner on Friday night, so
An
that was
alumni dinner.
so
Wowzers. We don't
so
have
we,
those.
no, I know. So we invited back the leavers. Well, basically the current lower sixth and upper sixth. So
Mhm.
we're all invited back, and that includes my Gemma, who's in the upper sixth at the moment.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
about 2/3 of each year group came back, whether they left at the end of year six or left at the end of year eight. So we had I think we had 56 children from
Mhm.
the 2 year groups, and then some of the teachers who were there when they were still pupils. I was obviously there as teacher of them and also as dad to Gemma. But then the parents don't come. The parents come for a drink at the beginning, and then we have curry in the dining room, and then the kids tend to go off to the pub and about 10 o'clock, and yeah, but that was really nice. And then on Saturday, I think I sent you a video of this. I don't want to say too much about Saturday, but I had a pretty wild night on Saturday. I was basically an undergraduate again, so I went up to Nottingham. Ollie's actually dropped out of second year uni. He's working on a farm down here, but I bought him tickets to go and see Graham Coxon and his new partner and mother of child, Eleanor Rose Dougal, who was in a band called the Pipettes. They've got a band called I say the
Yeah, I
Weave.
remember the pipettes.
The
Yeah.
Pipettes. I think so. I think that's probably the Wave. It's spelled Waeve. Sort of a folky sort of spelling, and the music was. So I bought tickets for Ollie for his birthday, which was back in February, and a friend, and then another friend came along, so he got a ticket on the day, and. It was lovely. I enjoyed it. It was a great gig. It wasn't very 20-something gig. It was a bit beard strokey, bit jazzy, bit folky, bit experimental, bit art rock. Liked it. I liked it a lot. But then I was there in Nottingham. I was going to be staying in Ollie's room, and so the night sort of unfolded, and we
Good
continued
heavens.
drinking via various hostelries, and then we ended up in a place called Route One in Nottingham, and I was dancing, and I was quite a lot older than everyone else in there, and I was quite in the younger generation was somewhat intrigued. And then we queued to go up into Nottingham Trent Student Union, a huge place, Nottingham Trent University Student Union, probably about 1,000 students in there, 19, 20, 21 year olds
Mhm.
mostly, and then me. And I was there
Yeah.
for about 2 hours. I was on the dance floor. I was a source of considerable fascination.
Having a
Um,
marvelous time. Were you
Having a
living
marvelous
what
time,
we like to say your best life?
my best life, and it was like it was 1992 all over again. I ended up on one of Ollie's mates' shoulders. The DJs loved it. I was being filmed
Can
by
I just
about
say that your son Ollie's mate, must be a very, very sturdy young man.
he was sturdy, unbelievable how he got me up on his shoulders. He was very drunk, and so the idea that he was going to put me on his shoulders was a ridiculous idea. I ended up on his shoulders for probably about a minute, and then I fell off his shoulders
I
and
bet you did.
landed. And I wondered why, and it's still only just recovered today. And this was Saturday night. That's Wednesday today. My left shoulder has been aching a little bit, which kind of broke my fall. So, but there we go. It was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I don't think. And Ollie was embarrassed by the idea of me going to the student union early evening before he'd have anything to drink. But once we were all on the sauce, it seemed like a good idea, and I think I was I was a legend, apparently. So that was Saturday night in Nottingham. It was good fun. We haven't talked about anything at all other than each other's fun or woes or whatever. And we're 20 minutes in, Ed.
20 minutes in. Well, I mean, I think maybe the audience, if there are an audience, I'm not looking at the chat. Are you? Maybe that's all they want to hear.
They like our chat. I think we have
Like
good.
chat. Do you
They
think
like
they'd
our
like
chat.
something profound, though? Would they like? Have you got any profundities or any profanities? We could go with either.
No, I said before you joined right at the beginning that last week's show was important and good, wasn't it? And I think I noticed when I logged in this evening to Podbean to broadcast the show, this evening's show, that our last week's show so far has had 258 downloads or uploads or whatever the word is, which is the second largest of the last week. There was another show which had 270. They were talking about the same thing. It was an Ofsted related
I
show.
bet ours was better, though, don't you think? I should imagine.
Maybe. I'm sure
it's not a competition. It's not a competition. We're all colleagues here on the Teacher Talk Radio. Yes. But still, I imagine ours was better.
So that's that. So, but last week we got quite deep, didn't we?
You know, there was a lot of feeling around. Do you know what? I had the sweetest interaction. I do with this thing. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the program. I probably have. But every Tuesday night, I take a room at the Crediton Arts Centre, and I convene the Crediton Strummers, which is a mixed group of people. I'd like to say of all ages, but mostly considerable ages. We sit around in a big circle and we play guitars and ukuleles and mandolins and whatever else people have got, and we sing some songs, and it's a lovely thing. But one of the guys who comes to the group is an ex-head teacher. He's retired 15 years ago or something now, so he's not recently in the game. But he came over last night and he was like, "Ed, how are you doing? Are you all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah. Why do you ask?" He's like, "It's just been such a week in education. I've been worried about you." I thought, bloody hell, he's been out of the game 15 years, but he's still thinking, God, I'm glad that wasn't me. He got out of the game. In fact, that dates it. He got out. He said he had one Ofsted and went, yeah, I'm done now. So. But anyway, no. So it was a tough week last week, and it's a tough week this week as well. A lot of people are still feeling it and thinking about it, and then of course everybody's so super tired because I don't know. This hasn't actually been a very long term, but gosh, has it felt it?
Oh, it's been a long winter though, hasn't it? But aside from professional matters and all that, I think it's been a long January, really. I mean, February was very dry but cold. March has been wet, windy and cold, and pretty cold as well. And spring, I know this because Ollie is working on a fruit farm, and it's late. Spring is late this year, guys. You know, in terms of budding, and
in terms of the budding.
Budding and blossoming and all that, it's late.
In terms of the daffodils and the primroses, it's all go. In terms of lambs, my word, lambs are springing out all over.
Yes.
Have you noticed that? My word, it's very lammy. Round me, it's lamtastic.
Lammy, not the fountain pen, lammy with the B. And it is very lammy. It's always, but you see, lammy's not determined by vernalization or whatever it's called.
It's not. No. They've ripened in a way protected from those. Now's the time. Drop them.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk a bit about, because obviously there's been. I haven't, because I'm not on Twitter. I said this, I think, right at the beginning. I think before, just as literally, you joined about 2 minutes in, I think, and so I was saying.
I'm sorry about that, but I have to explain. I was in a very tense game of Rummy Cub, and I couldn't.
Oh, you're Rummy Cub addict.
I'm a Rummy Cub addict. I had my time with Lemmings back in the day. I had my time with what was the one? There was never really into it. There was a red ball you had to get through an obstacle course on one of my early phones that I was quite badly addicted to. But Rummy Cub, I'm there. It's like 10:30 at night.
Mousetrap, not Mousetrap.
No, these are board games. Rummy Cub. I play Rummy Cub on my phone. I actually have the box of it, which lovely Kate lent me, and I haven't opened the box yet. I just carry on playing it on my phone, thinking one of these days I'm going to win a game. One of these days. I've been playing it without cease since half term. and I've won a total of 2 games in that time. I'm terrible at it. I must be terrible at it, because you'd have thought that the AI would be pitching me against people roughly my ability, wouldn't you? But I've won 2 games out of the very many I've played. So
Oh,
there was
Ed.
no way I could dump that. I felt like I was going to win. I was down to like 2 cards. I was like, I'm going to win here. I've got it. I've got it in a bag. I mean, I love Toby. I love the listeners, but I have to complete this. I didn't win. I never do.
Thank you for loving us, Ed. We love you too. But I'm glad that you love Rummy Cub as well. Anyway, but there's been a lot of stuff. Yeah, that's what I was saying, is that not having Twitter on my phone means, and not really buying a daily newspaper and not really watching the news means I'm sort of ignorantly blissful about ignorant bliss of what's going on, really. And I know there's been a pay offer, a shoddy pay offer that's been rejected,
Shocking
and I
pay
know,
offer.
and that I think triggered something that it's not good, is it? And I don't know. So I don't really want to get into the politics of things, but we were going to talk about, and we'll probably do most of the talking about this after the news. But we were going to talk about sort of private and state education and
Yeah, I wonder if we have anything to say on this. This will be fun.
well, I
Have you?
do.
You
but
do?
but I don't. But I think I have to be. It's obviously I'm privately educated, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to start working in my second private school in September, and I haven't whilst I work in one now. So I am. That makes me the devil in the minds of Laura McInerney and many people who are
I don't think it
pretty.
does. I don't. No, I don't
No,
think
I don't mean
Laura
that.
is.
Sorry, I'm not saying, but I think it's very easy to be anti private education, private healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
private anything when we have a pretty good, chronically underfunded though, state education system and
Mm-hmm.
state national health service and so forth. So obviously, but my principles are getting a little weaker as I get older. I think that tends to happen a bit, and then you get into Victor Meldrew, and just everything's rubbish, isn't it? But I think that in principle, the world would be fairer than it is, and we would have really good strong local communities, and strong local community hospitals, and strong local community networks, and strong local community schools, and we would have. We probably wouldn't be dividing people based on their psychometric or IQ or CAT scores aged 11 in grammar schools. And we probably wouldn't be having, elitist establishments which are offering a whole load more and whatever, probably 3, 4, 5 times more per pupil in terms of the cost of their education than the state. It's not good. But equally, that is the system. I would rather that we just had all that. But we don't, and we can't, and I think that whilst I do have some I think I'm quite egalitarian, and I think I have quite a large social conscience, particularly for someone from my social background and someone working in the kind of place that I do, and so I'm not, but I don't, and I don't. I abhor elitism, and I abhor sort of what's the word? Entitlement is horrible. Entitlement's a terrible thing. But on the flip side, we can't help our birth, what we're born into. We can't help the decisions our parents make for us, and I can't. It's not my fault that these things exist, and the world and class system, and perhaps humans natural, we are animals, there's a pecking order that happens in the animal kingdom in all, and so it's hard to be. I think a world where everyone is equal is not attainable and not possible. So that's just, but equally there are some things that, the divide in society, the divide between the rich and the poor seems to be worse than it ever has been in America and in this country, and therefore private schools and their elitism and their extra offerings and the sort of attitudes that can be inculcated in some of the people that go to some of those schools.
Well, it is some, isn't it? That's
It is
the
some.
thing. People who are not involved in private education, and I'm not, but I had the misfortune to attend a university which was stuffed full of them, because I love stuff full of them. And the problem is, you noticed the ones who rollick down the middle of the high street at 2 a.m. wearing dinner jackets and smashing wine bottles and smashing up people's bikes.
Yeah.
And it's very hard not to make judgments about public schooling on the basis of these very public ones.
Exactly, and of course we've had Boris Johnson as a prime minister, and, to a lesser extent David Cameron as a prime minister, and
that entire gang,
and that entire
yes,
gang.
I agree that they're not typical of all public schools, but it is very hard.
I found it very, very hard to when I left my school, and some of my school friends used to, we used to go on pub crawls in Battersea and Clapham, Clam and Battersia, and I didn't enjoy it. That's why I drifted away from that scene, because it always ended up with one or two of the pompous arses sort of parading, perhaps almost naked, and just ugly, ugly drunk, and sort of, the art of being a gentleman is not knowing how to behave as a gentleman, it's knowing how to misbehave as a gentleman, and all that sort of, but really, that's sort of.
Got to tell you, that sounds pretty awful.
It's awful. It's horrible. It's horrible, and that drove me away from it socially and culturally and professionally. But then, in terms of economics and, ultimately, I'm, particularly in the school I'm moving to, I'm for doing a standard teaching job, but 6 days a week, not 5 days a week, but with longer holidays. I'm paid quite a lot more than I can be in the state sector. So I went for an interview.
That's not the case across
It's not always the case.
Sector. No, I don't know if it's mostly the case either. I think an awful lot of people who are working for public schools are working very, very long hours with terms and conditions which are not as strong as those in.
Well, my pay rise. I think
that's not generally known.
No, yeah? Exactly. No, I think there's leagues and tiers within the private sector. When we think of the private sector as a national sort of subconscious, we think of Eton, and we think of Harrow, and we think of the premier league of top old-fashioned boys traditional public schools, but that's the minority of the private sector. That's not. So there are a lot of private schools that are on their knees financially, because and so and I think my pay offer at my school was 3% this year, and we can't go and strike really because of that, because we're it's very, very hard, and we haven't had a pay rise for a long time. But of course I it's only recently that I've maxed out on the grades, because I'm a relatively new teacher. I feel like I've gone through the the annual, and I think that's the real challenge, isn't it, in the teaching profession, is that if you just want to be a class teacher, you don't want to take on any TLRs, and you get through your 6 or 8, depending, or what is it, M6, and then yes, 1, 2, 3, maybe.
Well, we've got the uppers, and then we've got the leadership.
And then there's nowhere to go. And then if you're having no pay rise for a number of years, or a sub-inflationary pay rise for a number of years, and then the cost of living crisis kicks in, you are just losing.
Money. I'm a head teacher now, but I'm very, very significantly more skint than most of the time I was a classroom teacher. I can't make the ends meet. I can't. I don't know what I'm meant to be doing here. But But then that's probably a lot of people in the community I serve think Mr. Finch is probably earning quite well. He's a head teacher, don't you know? It's probably quite fancy. Well, it ain't fancy, I can tell you. It's a worry. And
I think that there's so I think there are private school teachers, you're not, you're not a Harley Street doctor if you're a private school teacher. You're not a private doctor with your Harley Street clinic and your Hollywood, whatever clients or whatever the word is. No, but I think there we go. I don't know. It's hard. But we'll
I mean,
talk a
I
bit
think it's
more about it.
increasingly hard. I'm a parent, and I've got a child who attends a state school. Now, I think his state school is pretty good, and I'm pleased with them. They do a good job, don't they? And you see how happy he is. You can see he's doing really well. But it's not the case for all our children. They're not all. So then the state sector is not able to give the care that it could 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. Simply isn't the case. We don't have the staff or the funding to do it. So if I had that sort of disposable income where I could scrimp and save, cancel the Netflix, and send him to public school, if he was a kid who was struggling, and mine isn't, but if he was a kid who was struggling with his well-being or struggling with his exams, it'd be a big old temptation, wouldn't it? Because state education is frankly not what it was. Let's hope that after another general election, maybe it'll swing around a bit. But at the moment, vulnerable
Yeah, I
children
think.
are they're vulnerable in our system.
Yeah. And I think that the thing with but thinking about private and state for me is that I'm 50, and I've got all my industrial previous, which
Mhm.
has no real financial value in the state or private sector particularly, but in the elite private sector. So we've got Tunbridge, which is in a very elite boys public school, which is right up there with Harrow and Eton and stuff, down the road from me. And that's not where I'm going to work, I just want to say. But that they are they employ people without teaching qualifications and train them. They
Mhm.
employ ex-engineers. They pull people with PhDs out of industry. They employ elite scientists, in their science department, and
Mhm.
sometimes they're exceptional teachers, or they train them to be. But of course, it's a very academically selective school. That doesn't mean to say it's got more academic children than an academic um, state school, but it just means that they've got several rungs up the ladder. So the teaching culture in that sort of school is very, very different. So I would find it very hard to get a job in a science department in that sort of school because I'm, you know, because I think, but equally in a grammar school, I found it hard because I've not taught chemistry from 14 to 18, and I don't have, I've been but so when I went for my grammar school job interview, I haven't actually had feedback. My lesson didn't go super well, I have to say. I was asked to teach a GCSE revision lesson, but it's interesting how it didn't feel like a great fit for me or for them. But
Mhm.
they had another guy who was considerably younger than me, who's already taught chemistry in a secondary school, and I'm sure he was a really good teacher and probably better than me for the role, but equally he was going to be cheaper than me, and
Mhm.
I think so. I think
Well,
in the
it's a no-brainer, friend. I'm sorry
yeah,
about
it's a
that. Yeah,
no-brainer. So I think in the
it's a
state
double
sector,
whammy for you.
exactly. So in the state sector, you've got new teachers, early career teachers are considerably cheaper than experienced teachers, and then you've got this whole people's irks about the ITT review and the all the Oak sort of the kind of scripted lessons thing that seems to be things
Mhm.
heading in that
So
direction,
how is that going? See, this is an interesting
the sort of
conversation because
de-skilling, whereas
yeah.
the de-skilling of the classroom teacher as this knowledgeable, multifaceted being is seems to be, if you pay close attention to Twitter and stuff, it seems to be being eroded a little bit because it's basically cheaper to get people straight out of a school direct program,
Yeah, and
teach for a few years.
I think a
And
lot of those people would say that's not the point. They say there's philosophical reasons, and they'll tell you about cognitive load and shit. I mean, good for them. It's definitely true in the state sector that the direction of traffic is just about. You can't take a stride against it, because Ofsted are going to come along and they've swallowed that water, and you're on a hiding to nothing if you argue against it. But I imagine that in really confident independent schools, so like a Wellington College or something, I
Yeah.
imagine that they can stand up against that and go, so no, we've got a way we do things, and this is how we do things, and we're not Ofsted in quite the same way, and we've got the independent schools people come in and we say this is our way, and it's all about character, and we don't want to go down the Okie route. I think. Am I right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, but I've just had my contract through today, and my job description is basically the teaching standards. So it's the same job.
Mm-hmm.
My is the teaching standards, and I have the same job and the same skills required.
But the teaching
Well,
standards haven't changed significantly in a very, very, very long
no, they
time, have
haven't
they?
changed. They're
No.
probably up for review, I'd say. But I would say that the big difference between a financially thriving, where there's waiting lists and people want to send their kids there, private school and a state funded school at the moment, is that um, you know, you can pay a bit more to get the teachers you want. You can. It's a very different job because it's a much longer day. It's the contact hours aren't as intense. Um, because your timetable spread over a longer school day. So the school day I'll be teaching will be 8. Well, I think from tutor time is 8:10, starts at 8:10 and finishes at 5 the school day. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
Saturday mornings as well. Not I won't actually be teaching Saturday mornings, but I might be, but I won't, not year 7 and 8. The year 7 and 8s don't have Saturday mornings, only year 9 upwards. And the justification of the Saturday mornings is that a lot of them have matches and stuff on the Saturday afternoon
Yeah, I think a
sport.
lot of those schools,
And then
the
you can just
Saturday,
offer a broader curriculum. You can pack in
yeah,
a bit more stuff, and so it's not all about what you can squeeze in academically between 9 and 3 or 9 and 3:30, and it is, and then there's a lot of after school stuff. There's a lot more, and that's what people are paying for, is that all round education. They are paying for good GCSE results and good A level results, but they are also paying for the in the more elite public schools, you're of course paying for contacts and paying for social elitism and all
mm-hmm.
that sort of stuff. But in your average local private school, which is not in this sort of Premier League socially or academically, what people are paying for is a sort of better pupil ratio, better resources, better facilities, and not necessarily better teaching, but just more
I think
more
people
kind of.
know what they're, I'm sure lots of people do, but I kind of feel that many people who are buying into this are buying into almost into a brand in the same way that I like buy into Converse things.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
So
yeah.
what exactly are you buying here? Well, it's going to go to private school. It's better, isn't it? Exactly how? Do you think they've got better teachers? Do you think they've got? I mean, yes, often they have better facilities, but sometimes surprisingly not.
No, no, that's true.
You know.
Surprisingly not. No, no, no. Surprisingly not. Absolutely. I mean, and I think it's changed a lot since I was at school. So when I was at school, and I went to socially elitist schools. My earlier schools were fairly academically elitist as well, but my secondary school was not academically elitist at all. But it was very socially elitist, and it was very different back in the late 70s or the 80s and right into the early 90s. I left school in 1991. And, the sort of schools I went to, the parents were what you'd say, describe as sort of old money, and,
Mm-hmm.
they very, very much trusted the school. They, as you said, they invested in that brand. They knew that it was going to give them contacts. They knew it was going to give them a social network. They knew it was going
Mm.
to provide an all-round balanced education with CCF and sport and creative arts and so forth, as well as the academic stuff. And and they dropped that, and then they were all boarding schools that I went to. I went as a day pupil to one of them early on until I was 12, and then I boarded from 12. And so it's very different when you're in boarding school, because you sort of dropped off with trust, and you didn't see your parents, and the parents didn't see the school for another 3 weeks, and it was all very hands off, and there was a lot of trust, and a lot of the parents were professional. They were lawyers
Mm.
or doctors or small business owners and stuff. Whereas now, and I was thinking about the fees. My day school fees when I was at prep school was £600 a term, whereas my kids' termly fees at the school I'm going to teach at is about 8,000 a term, if all in, if you include the extras and stuff like that. And so that's 24 grand a year, whereas it used to be 1,800, £2,000 a year. 40 years ago. So, that's, I don't know. I haven't done the inflationary maths, but people, and so the demands of parents now are far greater, partly because of league tables and partly because of all that stuff and the increased emphasis on GCSE results and A-level results and the pressure to get your kid to the right school and all that nonsense. But also, it just costs so much money, and a lot of people who have been, I know this is not going to sound good, what I'm about to say, but a lot of people who understand the historic culture of these schools, perhaps they can't necessarily afford to send their kids to those schools now. So a lot of people are first-time private school educators, and that's fine. You're buying into that system, you're buying that privilege, you're buying that contact, you're buying that for your kids. But they don't necessarily. They sort of. There's a lot of mentalities. I'm paying you to make my child clever, or I'm paying you to make my child get to that university, or I'm paying you, and of course, that puts a lot of pressure on the system, and I don't like that aspect of it at all. It's not pretty. But I think this sad thing is that in the state sector, communities go back to when we were children. So we're going back 40 years. Communities and stuff outside school was sort of stronger, wasn't it? Or perhaps safer, the roads and things like that as well. So there was a lot more, whereas now the school day's not got any longer, although there's now increasing pressure to make it longer. But I don't know, it's just that schools become too narrow, really. I think it was less pressured in terms of results and progress and all that sort of stuff.
I think that's certainly true. Yeah, I think that's certainly true. That what we want from, I'm thinking about primary education because that's meat and drink of what I've done, and I think the pressure on us to do X, Y, and Z, whether that's coming down the line from government or from Ofsted or wherever you want to derive it from, means we don't do as good a job as we did at some of the ABCs, and I think it's a tragedy. I'm like, if there isn't room in primary education to make a cardboard castle, then something's gone quite badly wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it's great that you can remember the date of this and that, and everything that was on the knowledge organizer, but the enrichment of our lives from our education is, I don't know. And I like to think that if you go to the right private school, you can buy back into that. That's what I like to think. And think, do you know what?
Yes.
It's quite tempting for a child who I know is struggling in mainstream because it's all face to front and listen to the teacher and remember the facts in the knowledge organizer. Maybe there's a place for private school which says something a bit gentler,
Well, I think there's a growing market for that. I think the school that I'm currently at and the school I'm going to definitely attract that sort of parent and that sort of child that is a bit lost in the sort of narrow, one-dimensional treadmill of the state system at the moment. And is a bit lost and a bit, they can find something else that maybe they're not strong academically or they're not strong with confidence, but they can find something, and I think there is that, but it's a shame the state can't provide that, isn't it? But I think, but on the flip side, I would say that I remember loving woodwork club when I was between the age of 8 and 12 at my local prep school that I went to daily. I was there until about 6 o'clock every day. And most of the people boarded and were there overnight, every night. But I was there till 6 o'clock, and I used to go to woodwork club and art club. And I wasn't very sporty, so I didn't do much of the extra sports sort of stuff. But there was just a lot of that. But there was no measurement of it. It was just you got into the flow and you enjoyed it. Whereas now,
well, how do you measure the impact then, Mister?
Exactly. Whereas now you
where's
have to
the
measure the
impact?
impact of all this sort of stuff, and so now and the world has moved away from woodwork and metalwork and to DT, hasn't it? And DT's got its there's some great things about DT or product design or whatever, but a lot of it becomes academic rather than just
Yeah.
losing yourself in a bit of
And
craft.
Actually
Yeah.
knowing a bit. Now, listen, my friend, it is 21:50. We've not had the news.
No, and then we need to have
will.
music as well.
We shall be struck off
Yes,
if that's what they do.
well, no, we can do. We only have to do the news once at any time during the show, so we just happen to normally do it. I like the half past.
We normally do it about halfway through, but I think
Yes.
let's
better
knock
do
it
it.
out.
We better do it.
And then come back for a chat and a sing. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's it. We're done. But there we go. Right, here we are. News and adverts and stuff. Back in 7 minutes, people.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncatbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
In a week where Ofsted has found itself under increased pressure and scrutiny following the death of a primary school head teacher, The Independent has focused on the decision by many school leaders to remove references to Ofsted from websites. The removal of logos and other references from school letterheads, websites and other materials is being done in what many describe as solidarity with head teacher Ruth Perry. Other forms of protest against the inspectorate have included the wearing of black clothing and displaying photographs of Ms Perry in schools where inspections are taking place. Unions have also urged Ofsted to pause inspections, and the NEU handed in a petition to the Department for Education, which had 45,000 signatures, calling for an accountability system that was supportive, effective and fair. In a statement, Amanda Spielman, HMCI, said it would be against children's best interests to pause inspection, and that inspection was important for both schools and parents. It has been further revealed by the BBC that inspectors had visited Caversham Primary School, where Miss Perry was head teacher, in 2019, as part of a pilot of the latest inspection framework, and that Miss Spielman had also been present. In a newsletter written at the time, Miss Perry said she was proud of how well pupils and staff had responded to the experience and that feedback had been overwhelmingly positive. But a formal inspection in November 2022 rated Caversham Primary as inadequate as a result of failings in training, record keeping and checks on staff, although it did also state that children were provided with a good education and that the school was a welcoming and vibrant community. In a statement, Amanda Spielman said that the debate about reforming inspections to remove grades was legitimate, but any changes would need to meet the needs of parents and government. And a spokesman for the Prime Minister said, "We are confident the current rating system provides the right level of transparency for parents." In Manchester, students at the city's university who have been refusing to pay their rent in protest at high costs have been removed from a university building by bailiffs. The group of rent strikers had occupied the University of Manchester's Simon Building, and videos on the BBC News website appeared to show some protesters being carried out. A spokesperson for the university said it regretted the action, but that the protest had been going on for a significant amount of time. Campaigners said the situation was disgraceful and shamed the university. Around 250 students cancelled payments in January and demanded a 30% reduction in rent, arguing they were struggling to buy food amid the cost of living crisis. A smaller group occupied the building, and it was this group who were removed by bailiffs, enforcing a court order after they had ignored multiple requests to leave. At the University of Birmingham, a recovery flat where students with different addictions can live together to help them complete their studies has been opened. The BBC reports on the programme, which is being pioneered by the university, and is trying to help students stay addiction-free. The Vale, a huge student village near the campus in Edgbaston, is home to thousands of undergraduates. In one of the large blocks of flats, 6 units have now been set aside for students in recovery. Supported by a peer manager, the flats are alcohol and drug free and currently are male only, although it is hoped another flat for 6 female students will open next year. The hope is that students can enjoy university life without missing out on support. The programme is supporting the Better Than Well project, which currently supports around 50 students and was set up to help students with addictions to be successful at university and with their recovery. On South Townside, a primary school in Jarrow kick-started their Kindness Matters Week as it became the first Kindness Matters school in the area. Pupils at St Joseph's Catholic Primary School and its staff were asked, "What does kindness mean to you?" And, in the run-up to the main event, completed a 30-day Kindness Matters challenge. Kindness Matters was set up in 2012 by John McGee, known as the Kindness Coach, and it teaches kindness and well-being to school children and teachers. McGee visited the school as part of the week, where he led a super learning day focusing on what the pupils had done so far and what they would do next to help the world be more kind. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week I've got to episode 60. What better to celebrate 60 episodes but look at what potentially happens every 60 seconds online and do it in 60 seconds. To do this, I've used the term infographic in my search. Infographics are a great way to show visually a lot of data. They're not just for IT concepts, and I'd recommend seeing if you can find any that represent your subject. The most recent infographic I found was in a blog by Stephanie Hyman called What Happens in an Internet Minute. Feel free to look her up and read her research. Right, here we go. Start the countdown. In an Internet Minute, 174,000 apps are downloaded, 16.2 million texts are sent, 231 million emails are sent, 694 million songs are streamed, 6 million people buy something online, 5.9 million Google searches are made, 44 million people view Facebook live streams, 20.8 thousand active users are on LinkedIn, 2.1 million people are active on Facebook, 575,000 tweets are sent, 46,000 searches are done on Pinterest, 66,000 photos and videos are shared on Instagram, 2 million Snapchats are sent, 167 million videos are watched on TikTok, 452,000 hours of content are streamed on Netflix, 3.67 million YouTube videos are watched, and that's just the headlines of an Internet Minute. That's a lot of data flying around on the biggest network of networks there is, the Internet. As always, if you have a question on tech, why not send it to @TTRadioOfficial. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello.
Hello.
We've only got 3 minutes left. And
shame, really.
Lots of chat on the chat. Lots of chat on the head. Maxim been waxing lyrical about the Isle of Man. He was very pleased the news came along. He said he was only here for the news. Hello, Maxim. But he talked about we don't get a staffing budget, rather a staffing allocation. So I can point to the number of staff. Makes no odds to me if they're upper 3 or M6 or an ECT in terms of my budget. That's an interesting model, isn't it?
Isn't it?
That's good.
I mean, I will have to talk to him sometime about that because that is really interesting. It would just love to know how do you. I worked in Germany where people are moved around. The state moves you around, so you get a job.
Yeah, and it happens in France and Spain as well.
I think it's very common in Europe, and same was true when I worked in Ethiopia. The same was true for head teachers. They got moved around, so they didn't have a great sort of sense that this is my school and I'm building it in my own image and things like. No, I'm here to run the school for the community, and this is how I do it. And the state sends me teachers. I don't spend ages choosing them, I get sent some teachers and we do the best we can. And I sort of think, well, I quite like that UK head teachers build a school which is distinctive and feels right for them and their community and choose the team to staff it. On the other hand, that can be horribly toxic. So,
yeah, I think the whole thing comes down to people. And there's good people, as in teachers and head teachers, in all sectors, and there's bad people in all sectors as well, and I think the but it's the sort of there's the martyrdom thing, which we've spoken about before, going back at least a year or so. A martyrdom thing in the teaching profession, whereas ultimately it's a job, and you've got to reward people, with a combination of pay and joy in the workplace, and pensions and support, benefits and so forth, haven't you? But the problem is that there are still not enough, but there are still quite a lot of people out there who want to do the job of teacher because they've got a sort of moral purpose associated with it. But that seems to have been eroded, and that perhaps is because it's just harder. It's more scrutinised, isn't it? In both.
You're not so much on Twitter as you were. You should pop back over and visit lovely Ben Newmark, who published a blog today, which I found very moving.
Is Ben's back on, is he? He's supposed to be off for Lent.
Well, he was on, and he published this beautiful blog. I don't know, maybe he wrote it in sort of a blog, hit and run published, but it's beautiful. He talks about how he drifted into teaching in the same way that so many of us do, actually. He was running bars and clubs. That was his job. It's very hard to imagine Ben running pubs and clubs, I think, but that's what he was doing. And then, found that he just didn't really enjoy being in that place where there's, a continual threat of violence and lots of drug use and things when you were trying to run nightclubs, And so he thought, I'd really like to be a writer, but I can't really be a writer because you need to, you need a day job till you...
Good writer, though, isn't he?
Till you write, he's a brilliant writer, but, till you write that first brilliant novel which gets you on the Booker Prize and writing residence things, you need a job. So he became a teacher, and now he says, I cannot imagine doing anything else. And he sort of says, all those brilliant things. So he sort of says, you might find yourself in a room, and then he sort of gives this really, very precise observation, which is personal, but which feels universal because we all have these things. And you think, well, I don't know. I mean, it's actually hard at this time of term, at this time of year, to keep your eyes on those moments of specialness and moments of joy. It genuinely is quite tricky, I think. And many of us find that the moments of joy in the day don't feel quite enough to outweigh some of the other stuff that's going on. I think that's fair enough. We experience that, but it's a beautiful blog, and I do recommend it to you and to.
I will go and seek that out because I like Ben's blogs. I like Ben's blogs, Ben's writing. I will seek that out because I'm not. I will do that, and I agree. I feel kind of like that now. I feel like a teacher. I will see how I feel in September and in February next year and all that malarkey. But once I'm stuck in, it's whereas I think it's a special thing, but it's a hard thing as well. And if you're devalued nationally, politically and economically, then that's not good for morale. But we've got to try and be positive and have some joy and have some music, Ed. And so,
yes, right.
Over the next 2 weeks, I think I can do the next 2 weeks. I think. But could we maybe have a show on chocolate and a show on hobbies? I don't know. We don't do a show on chocolate. I don't know, but one. I just think. No, hobbies. I'd quite like to just talk about not like hobbies that bring us joy. You can obviously talk about your
hobbies. We're not talking about the Raptor here. We're talking about
we're talking about your rummy cup and your
I don't think
your lino
cup. More of a compulsion, isn't it?
Yes. No, but your lino stuff and I could I don't know. I think just talk about things that keep us sane outside of the workplace, and bring us purpose beyond, amateurish things that bring us purpose outside of the professional realm. I think. Right, come on, let's have some music.
Okay. Well, Aaron, what are we having?
I made a suggestion.
You made loads of suggestions, mate. And whether I pay any attention to them or not, it's my own business.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think. We were trying to think briefly online before we went online of any songs we could think of by public school educated musicians, and of course there are quite a lot. So I'm trying to think of which one I can readily do. I've got an idea. Hang on a second.
You got an idea?
Got an idea. And I can't find it. Oh, mate, hang on a second. I'm in 6s and 7s here. I was gonna do this one. He says, wait for the internet to work. Haven't tuned the guitar. Does it sound all right?
Sounds good.
Doesn't. It sounds terrible, but it's all right.
No, it does sound good.
Love this guitar. Bought it for £5 in a charity shop in the early 90s, and it's still my favourite. So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain? Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail, a smile from a veil? Do you think you can tell? Did they get you to trade? This is even in the wrong key, aren't I? I'm in totally the wrong key. You nearly there?
Yeah.
Did they get you to trade your heroes for ghosts? Hard ashes for trees, hot air for a cool breeze, cold comfort for change. Did you exchange a walk-on part? I think if I take my headphones off, it might work better. No, I can't do it. Can't do it. It's not working.
Ed,
this is the thing. No,
nice.
No, it was wrong. I'm saying, like, if I get the right starting note, anybody out there in the chat able to give me the starting note?
Is that?
I wonder if it's wrong my ears.
Is that Wish You Were Here?
Yeah, I was trying to do if it was you here, but I just can't get the starting note. I need it. Maybe I'll practice it up and do it for next week. I'm going to do an easy one just for now because I can't close on that. This is the risk, people. The people out there in radio land, I genuinely don't practice. For me, it's all about the jeopardy. And once in a while, it doesn't come out right.
It's still delicious hearing
no, it was terrible.
Hearing you try.
Shocking. Shocking. I was trying, but I wasn't doing a great job. What do we fancy? I'm just trying to think. Tell you what, we got a new leader of the SNP, and we wish him all the luck. And it's exciting. It's the first Muslim to lead a country, I think in Europe. So it's quite exciting. So I'll just do a bit of Scottish stuff. We didn't get on to talking about it, but go. There's naught but care on every hand, in every hour that passes, oh. What signifies the worth of man, and were not for the lasses, oh. Green grow the rashes, oh. Green grow the rashes, oh. The sweetest hours that e'er I spent were spent among the lasses, oh. The worldly race may riches chase, and riches may fly o'er them all. When at last they catch them fast, their hearts can ne'er enjoy them all. Green grow the rushes, oh. Green grow the rushes, oh. The sweetest hours that e'er I spent were spent among the lasses, oh. Nearly 10 past, we better stop.
Oh, Ed, thank you.
Nice to spend time with you. You get yourself to bed now. You've got an early start.
We'll speak then next week before I see you next week. Is that right? Does that work? Can you do Wednesday next week? I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can. I might have a night out down in Devon, actually.
Well, that's exciting. Out with whom?
Oh, out with probably my mate Jonesy, who was originally Amanda's mate Jonesy, who lives in Hatherley. And so I think we're going for a Wednesday afternoon walk and possibly grub in the Devilstone Inn. I might be back for 9, but I might not be.
Well, let's not worry about too much. But I'm not sure. I should be back. I'm having a couple of days in a yurt just outside Tavistock, which I'm feverishly excited for. But
that's nice.
By then, yeah, it should be, shouldn't it?
Well, so next week's a bit. I'll figure it out. I think it might not happen, but then we will definitely happen the week after. Is that all right? I think.
I reckon that's probably all right. I think that's
Who
all
knows?
right.
Anyway,
Okay, we'll see.
let's discuss it offline. And thank you for listening. Thank you for saying thank you, you lovely pair. Thank you for listening, people. Thank you for listening back. And thank you, Ed, for being lovely. Good night, everybody.
See you all, everybody. Love you. Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.